"Don't touch her! I said don't you dare touch her!" Elena's voice tore through the workshop like lightning, sharp, trembling, alive with fear and fury. Her arm was wrapped around Lily, shielding her with her whole body, as if she could hold back the entire world with just her bare hands. He saw it with his own eyes. The young housekeeper, small in stature but fierce in spirit, standing in front of her sister as three grown men shouted at her in the middle of the repair shop. And he, disguised in grease-stained clothes and a borrowed name, could do nothing but watch as the truth shattered everything he thought he knew about the people in his life. But this moment, this wasn't how the story began. It was the moment that changed him. His real name was Daniel Whitford, a silent millionaire from Savannah, Georgia, the kind of man who built empires but trusted no one. Wealth gave him everything except peace. And after years of being used, lied to, taken advantage of, Daniel did something no one in his circle would ever expect. He disguised himself as Danny, a simple mechanic's apprentice in a small-town garage in Asheville, North Carolina. He told no one. He wanted to observe how people behaved when they believed no one powerful was watching. That's when he met Elena Marquez, the housekeeper who cleaned the owner's office at the shop every afternoon. She always arrived with her younger sister, Lily, a sweet girl with Down syndrome, who hummed happily while arranging small flowers she picked on the walk there. Lily had the purest smile Daniel had ever seen in his life, so light it made something in him ache. Elena was attentive, gentle, but there was a shield around her, a quiet strength, like someone who has fought the world alone for far too long. Daniel noticed the small things first. She often skipped lunch to make sure Lily ate. She flinched slightly whenever anyone raised their voice. And she never ever asked for help. But the others at the shop, they didn't see that. They saw only what they wanted to see, a poor woman, an inconvenience, someone beneath them. And Daniel, used to being treated like a king, found himself watching injustice from the opposite side of the class divide for the first time. The incident that shattered the silence happened on a Tuesday afternoon. Lily accidentally knocked over a tray of tools, loud metal clattering across the floor. A simple mistake. But the foreman, short-tempered, loud, the kind of man who believed power was measured in how harshly he scolded others, lost control. He pointed at Lily, raised his voice, and called her a burden. Elena moved before anyone could breathe. She didn't shout. She didn't back down. She stood in front of her sister, voice steady, hands trembling only slightly. "Don't you ever speak to her like that again." That was the moment Daniel saw her. Not just the woman cleaning floors, not just the sister carrying a weight too heavy for one person. He saw a warrior, and something inside him shifted. Weeks later, this moment would uncover a secret Daniel never expected to find. A secret that would expose betrayals in his own family, shake the foundations of his trust, and make him choose between protecting his wealth or protecting the two women who had unknowingly changed him. But for now, the listeners were only at the beginning, because every story of love, loyalty, and redemption begins with a wound. And this wound was about to open. And before we continue, it's very important that you subscribe to our channel and comment which country and city you're watching from. Daniel didn't sleep that night. The image of Elena standing in front of Lily like a shield replayed in his mind over and over. There was something about the way she had lifted her chin, afraid, yes, but unshakable, that unsettled him in a way money never could. He had spent years in boardrooms negotiating with men who owned banks and shipping lines. He'd argued with politicians, sat with people whose names held weight in entire states. Yet none of them had ever shown courage like that. Courage that came from love, from sacrifice, from survival. The next morning at the shop, he noticed everything differently. The grease under his nails, the cold concrete floor, the sound of metal striking metal. The world felt real here, heavy, raw, unpolished. Elena entered quietly, as always. Lily walked beside her, holding a small paper bag of wildflowers she had picked along the roadside. Lily stopped when she saw Daniel, Danny to her. "Hi, Danny," she said, her entire face lighting up. He smiled. "Good morning, Lily. Those are beautiful." "For you," she said, placing the flowers into his oil-stained hands without hesitation. Something tightened behind his ribs. No one had given Daniel something, anything, without expecting something in return. Not in years. Elena froze when she saw the flowers in his hand. "I'm sorry," she said quickly, almost embarrassed. "She likes to give things away. She doesn't understand." "She understands kindness," Daniel interrupted gently, "more than most people." Their eyes met, just for a second. Elena looked away first. There was a reason she avoided eye contact, a reason she kept her world small, her steps quiet, her needs silent. And Daniel began to notice other things that day. The foreman, Rick, didn't shout at Elena again, but he didn't hide his resentment either. Whispered jokes, rolled eyes, tools placed deliberately out of reach, forcing her to ask for help she didn't want to ask for. When Lily tried to place a flower near the office window, a mechanic brushed past her roughly, knocking it from her hand. Not enough to be called assault, just enough to be cruel. Daniel saw all of it, and for the first time in his life, he couldn't fix it with money. He had to stay silent to protect his disguise, but silence is its own kind of suffering. Later, during lunch break, Daniel sat under the shade of a pecan tree behind the shop. Elena and Lily sat nearby, sharing one sandwich. Elena barely eating, Lily talking softly between bites. "I used to have a job at a hotel," Elena said softly to her sister. "There was music sometimes, remember? At the cafe? You danced there." Lily nodded, her smile far away. "Mom liked when you danced," Lily whispered. Eleanor's breath trembled. Their mother. Gone. No safety net. No family left, except each other. Daniel did not move closer. He didn't speak. He just listened, because he needed to understand. Then Elena said something so quiet he almost missed it. "One day, things will be better. I don't know how. But I promise you, Lily, I will find a way." There was no audience, no glory, no one to applaud her strength. She said those words to keep both of them alive. And Daniel felt something unfamiliar and dangerous inside him. He wanted to protect them, not because they were weak, but because the world around them was cruel. But something else was happening too, something he didn't yet see. Rick, the foreman, had noticed how Daniel looked at Elena. He noticed how Lily trusted him, and resentment is a seed that grows fast in bitter soil. That night, Rick made a phone call to someone who should never have received Daniel's name. Someone from Daniel's real world, someone who should not know where he was, someone tied to a past betrayal he had spent years running from, and just like that, the past began moving toward them, slowly, quietly, like a storm in the distance. The call Rick placed the night before went to a number he kept for opportunities, the kind that paid in cash and didn't ask for receipts. The man who answered said little, just a clipped practice drawl. "Text me the name." Rick typed, "Whitford, goes by Danny, Asheville, Whitford Auto and Diesel." The last word hung on his screen. He smirked at the coincidence. Daniel working in a garage that shared his last name without anyone noticing the irony. The man on the other end finally replied, "Stand by." Morning in Asheville arrived crisp and bright. Church bells from Biltmore Village drifted in over the industrial hum. On the break room table, someone had left a box of glazed donuts and a sweat-beaded gallon of sweet tea. Grease-stained paper towels, a faded Carolina Panthers magnet on the crooked fridge, a stack of Advance Auto catalogs, ordinary things. The kind that gives small lives shape. Danny came in early and checked the parts inventory. He'd learned the rhythm of the shop, which rotors moved, which belts always went missing, which deliveries Rick forgot to log. He was collecting small truths quietly, piece by piece, as if building a bridge he might need to run across later. Elena arrived with Lily just after 8. Lily wore a yellow cardigan despite the warmth. She liked how the pockets hugged her hands. She had made a little origami crane from a fast food napkin and presented it to the woman at the front desk. The crane collapsed in the woman's palm. Lily giggled, then colored shy when she realized it hadn't held. "It's perfect," the clerk said, surprising even herself with the softness in her tone. Elena smiled. A brief mercy can feel like sunshine. By mid-morning, a black SUV with out-of-state plates rolled past the bay doors and kept going. Daniel noticed. The model was too new for the neighborhood, the tint just a shade too dark. He forced himself back to the alternator he was reattaching. Paranoia was a luxury he couldn't afford, not with his disguise balanced on such thin ice. At noon, Rick called a shop reset. Brooms, mop buckets, oil dry. Elena tied on her apron and got to work, moving like water, quick, quiet, thorough. Lily hummed something from VBS last summer, a song about sparrows and hands that catch them if they fall. It happened in a blink. Rick lifted a chrome tag Hoyer from his locker, brand new, unusually expensive for a foreman's salary, and made sure half the shop saw him slip it onto his wrist. An hour later he started shouting, "Where's my watch?" Heads turned. Tools paused. Air grew thick. He stormed into the office, flung open drawers, then glanced, too deliberately, at Elena's cleaning cart. "That bag," he said, pointing to the side pouch where she folded rags. "Open it." Elena's face drained. "Those are my cloths," she said softly. "I fold them at home to save time." "Open it," Rick repeated, stepping closer, voice sliding into that cold place men use when they want to make fear look like justice. Lily stepped forward. "She didn't take your watch," she said, hands clenched, eyes bright with panic. Rick ignored her. Elena untied the pouch. Rags, spray bottle. A thrift store paperback with its spine broken from too many rereads. No watch. "Her backpack," Rick said, not missing a beat. Elena lifted it with trembling hands and unzipped it. A second-hand phone with a cracked screen. A sandwich wrapped in wax paper. A small container of rice for Lily. 2 bus passes. A folded Dollar General receipt. And at the very bottom, gleaming like a verdict, the tag Hoyer. Time stopped. Lily gasped. No, that's not..." Elena stared at the watch as if it had grown there, as if her own belongings had betrayed her. "I didn't put that there," she whispered. Daniel felt heat crawl up his throat. He had watched Rick all morning. He had seen the way the foreman had lingered by the cart as Elena helped Lily to the restroom. He'd seen the false care in the man's eyes, the performance of patience before the strike. But Daniel was trapped by his own lie. If he defended Elena too forcefully, he would expose himself. If he stayed silent, the shop would eat her alive. He stepped forward carefully. "Rick," he said, deliberately slow. "Maybe the security camera caught something." Rick's smile didn't reach his eyes. "Camera's been dead for weeks, Danny." "Then call the police," Daniel replied. "If you really think she stole it, call them." Elena flinched. The last thing she needed was a scene, a record, a stain she couldn't scrub off. But Daniel knew bullies like Rick preferred crowds to cops. He was betting on the foreman's cowardice. Rick dialed, not 911, a number already in his recent calls. "Yeah," he said into the phone, turning away slightly. "It's time." 5 minutes later, the black SUV rolled back and parked. 2 men in plain clothes got out, the kind whose belts carried more than keys. One stayed by the vehicle. The other walked in with a badge and a practiced expression. "Officer Camden Rourke," he said, too casual. "We received a tip about theft at this location." Daniel's pulse hammered. The name Rourke wasn't random. Camden Rourke had once worked as a consultant for Daniel's aunt, Marla Whitford, the woman who chaired the board after Daniel had stepped back, the same aunt who believed Daniel was unfit to lead because he had feelings about people who weren't worth a cent on paper. Rourke's eyes slid over the room and landed on Daniel a fraction too long. Recognition sparked, then cooled. He moved on. "Whose bag?" he asked. Elena nodded, voice barely there. "Mine." Rourke glanced inside, lifted the watch with a pen, and set it on the desk. "We'll need a statement," he said, tone neutral. Lily wrapped both arms around Elena's waist. "She didn't," she repeated, voice cracking. "She didn't." Rourke looked at Lily, then at Elena, then at the watch again, the whole tableau of small lives under a magnifying glass. Daniel breathed through his nose and did the one thing he could do without shattering his cover. He introduced doubt. Funny thing, he said lightly, as if chatting about carburetors. That watch, Tag Heuer Aquaracer, right? There's a sticker on the back from Belmont Jewelers. They always etch the buyer's initials inside the clasp for a free personalization. You can open it with your nail. If the initials aren't RH... He let the sentence hang. Rourke flipped the clasp. The etching read JM. A murmur rippled through the shop. Rick's mouth tightened. It was a gift. From who? Daniel asked, smiling like a man who enjoyed bar talk. Because Belmont doesn't sell to just anyone on credit. They keep records. Might want to check that before you drag a woman to the station. Rourke studied Daniel's face again, longer this time. Then he turned back to Rick. We'll follow up with the jeweler, he said. To Elena, you're not under arrest. Don't leave town. Elena nodded, swallowing hard. We don't go anywhere. The men left. The SUV idled a full minute before pulling away. Rick watched from the doorway, jaw grinding. He hadn't expected a chess match. He'd planned a public hanging. He needed a different lever, something that would hurt faster. By evening, a notice to vacate was taped to the door of the small basement unit Elena and Lily rented off Patton Avenue. Effective in 3 days for lease violations, no one could explain. The landlord, Mr. Buckley, refused to come to the door. A woman from the management company said a complaint had been filed about excess people coming and going. There were no excess people. There was only them. Elena folded the notice carefully, like she could make it smaller that way. Lily sat on the second-hand couch and tried not to cry, repeating, it's okay, until the words sounded like rain. Daniel stared at the paper in his hands, a pressure building inside his chest he couldn't name. He had the power to end this with a single phone call, a wire, a lawyer, a cashier's check. But if he did, people like Rick, and people above Rick, would smell money and come closer. He needed proof. He needed leverage. He needed to know who was holding the other end of the rope. At midnight, he returned to the shop with the spare key he'd been given for early starts. He moved through the dark by memory, past the lifts, the tool chests, the rack of uniforms. In Rick's office, he found a locked metal file. Inside, invoices with odd rounding patterns, vendor names that bounced between P.O. boxes, a ledger where a single set of initials appeared beside cash withdrawals multiple times, C.R. Camden Rourke. Near the bottom, a sticky note, Marla wants confirmation by Friday. There it was, the hand behind the curtain. Daniel closed his eyes. His aunt didn't want him dead. She wanted him exposed, reckless, compromised, rescuing a stranger with company funds so the board could vote him out permanently. If she could tie him to a scandal, staged theft, falsified assistance, anything that looked like poor judgment, she could lock him out of his legacy forever. He slid his phone from his pocket. Not his real phone, the burner. He photographed everything. On his way out, he heard a sound, the soft crunch of steps on gravel. A shadow crossed the gap under the office door. Danny, Rick's voice called, falsely friendly. You forget something? Daniel pocketed the burner and straightened. He opened the door with a mechanic's easy grin. Couldn't sleep, he said. Figured I'd get a jump on the brake jobs. Rick stepped into the frame, smile like a blade. Good man, he said. Long day tomorrow. Behind him, the black SUV idled again at the curb. The storm had arrived. The storm did not hit all at once. It came slowly, like a pressure change in the air, subtle enough that someone who had never been wounded before might miss it. But Daniel had lived his whole life surrounded by predators in tailored suits. He knew when he was being hunted. The next morning, Rick treated him differently, not with hostility but with friendliness that felt like a hand closing around the throat. He clapped Daniel on the back. He made small talk. He deferred to him in front of the other mechanics. He was waiting, watching, trying to see how much Daniel knew. Daniel matched the tone, smiled back, wiped grease from his hands like every other man in the room. He spoke slowly, moved deliberately, kept every reaction quiet. But inside, his mind was calculating distances, doors, witnesses, exit routes. He wasn't afraid for himself. He was afraid for them. Elena didn't speak much that day. Her usually soft expression was tight, Her eyes dimmed with exhaustion. She didn't cry. Daniel sensed she was beyond crying. She worked with the mechanical precision of someone who had cried out every last tear years ago. Lily tried to hum, but her voice kept breaking. The shop felt wrong, thicker, meaner. At lunch, Daniel walked outside to find Elena sitting behind the dumpster near the pecan tree. Not crying, just breathing like every inhale hurt. Lily was drawing chalk flowers on the cracked pavement. "Did you find a place to go?" Daniel asked gently. Elena shook her head. "I don't have savings," she said, voice raw. "Every dollar goes to Lily's medication, her appointments, the buses, everything. I can't get another apartment without references or deposits, and—" Her voice cracked, but she pushed through it. "We've been here before. We'll figure something out." Daniel sat beside her, not close enough to overwhelm, but close enough to be present. "Do you have any family?" he asked. "No," she answered, without hesitation. "It's just us." Lily looked up from her chalk drawing. "But we're okay," she chimed, smiling, "because Elena is strong." The words hit harder than they should have. Daniel swallowed. "You shouldn't have to be strong alone." For the briefest second, Elena looked at him, not at Danny the mechanic, but something deeper, something she couldn't yet name. She opened her mouth to reply, but the back door slammed open. Rick stood there, wiping his hands with a rag. "Marquez," he called, "when you're done with your break, Mr. Whitford wants to see you." Time stopped. Daniel didn't move. Elena didn't breathe. Mr. Whitford, Daniel's real last name. But Rick didn't know what that meant. Not truly. The reference was to the company, to the empire, to the board that controlled his family's fortune. Rick thought he was delivering a threat. He didn't realize he had just spoken Daniel's truth into the open air. Daniel stood slowly. "Why?" he asked, voice neutral. Rick's smile twisted. "Turns out the building owner wants to personally review the situation regarding the theft. You'll come too, Danny, just in case they want statements." Elena's face paled. Daniel felt the trap setting around them like iron teeth. He didn't argue. He simply nodded. But before they left, he knelt beside Lily. He lowered his voice, gentle as a prayer. "Stay close to your sister today," he said. Lily nodded, her fingers gripping Elena's hand tight. The office they were taken to wasn't a police station. It was a private law office off Charlotte Street. Polished floors, glass walls, the kind of place where justice bent for those who could afford its flexibility. Inside sat a woman in her early 60s, poised, elegant, wearing pearls like armor. Marla Whitford, Daniel's aunt. She didn't look at Daniel first. She looked at Elena. Her gaze was clinical, assessing, dismissing. Then she spoke, to the room, not the people. When desperation meets opportunity, theft becomes inevitable. Elena flinched as if struck. Daniel stepped forward. "That watch was planted." Marla raised a brow. "Oh, and you're certain because—" "Because he had been in Rick's office, because he had proof, because he was the rightful heir of the Whitford Business Foundation. But if he said that, everything collapsed. So he simply said, 'Because I was there.'" Marla's smile was small and cold. So was everyone else. She slid a document across the table, a settlement offer. "If you sign this," she told Elena, "you will agree to stay silent and never pursue legal accusation for damages, defamation, or emotional distress. In return, we will give you $1,500 and bus fare out of state. You will leave tonight." Lily's breath caught. "We can't leave. Elena has her job. My doctor—" Marla cut her off without looking at her. "There are other doctors." Elena's hands shook. It was not just cruelty. It was erasure. Daniel's voice was quiet. Too quiet. "You targeted her to get to me." At last, Marla looked at him. Not Danny, Daniel. "You were always so predictable," she said. "Bleeding heart, savior complex, easy to steer. I knew you'd attach yourself to someone here. All I had to do was wait." Elena's eyes widened as the truth fell into place. Danny wasn't Danny, and the danger wasn't just poverty, it was power. Marla leaned forward. "Walk away from them, Daniel. Come home. Sign the board agreement. Leave all the distractions behind, or I will ruin them completely." Elena stared at Daniel. Lily's small hand slipped into hers. And in that moment, something inside him, something old, tired, and obedient, broke. He turned to Marla. No. One word, soft, final. Marla did not blink. Then you leave me no choice. She nodded to Rick. Rick smiled, and the door behind them locked. The click of the lock was soft, but it might as well have been an explosion. Lily gripped Elena's arm with both hands, her breathing turning shallow and fast. Elena didn't move, didn't blink. She was too busy calculating danger, the way people who have been cornered their whole lives learn to do. Daniel stepped forward before Rick could. "Stop," he said, voice low. But Rick had waited for this. He wanted it. He wanted the moment he could finally hurt someone without consequences. Marla didn't even look up. She was stacking papers, straightening a pen, as if none of this involved her hands at all. "Don't make this unpleasant," she murmured. Rick reached for Elena's arm, and Daniel moved. Not with the grace of someone trained, no. With the force of someone who has spent a lifetime restraining himself. He grabbed Rick's wrist and twisted, not enough to break, but enough to send pain shooting through nerves and bone. Rick let out a short, shocked sound. The other man in the room, a security aide who had been silent until now, stepped toward Daniel. But Daniel turned his head slowly toward him, eyes sharp. "Think carefully," he said. "She's recording." They all froze, because Lily, sweet, gentle, humming Lily, was holding up her cracked phone, the record icon glowing red. Elena hadn't noticed when it happened. Daniel hadn't either. But Lily had understood something essential. When you have no power, you gather proof. Rick froze mid-step. His expression flickered, from anger to fear. Marla finally looked up. "Delete the video," she said calmly. Not a request. A command. Lily shook her head once, small but steady. "She was hurting," Lily said. "You were hurting her." Her voice shook, but her courage did not. Marla sighed, not angry, but tired, as though Lily's refusal were merely an inconvenience. She turned her cold gaze to Daniel. "You always did surround yourself with broken things." Daniel felt something inside him ignite, a fire he had suffocated for years, a fire of shame and anger, and something he hadn't allowed himself to feel since childhood. The need to protect. But it was Elena who spoke. Her voice was soft, but it held steel. "We are not broken," she said. Marla paused. Elena stepped forward, not cowering now, but rising. "We survive," she said. "We work. We care for each other. We love. That makes us stronger than you could ever be." Marla's expression did not change, but something in her jaw tightened. She turned to Rick. "Remove them." Rick stepped forward again, this time slower, more cautious. Lily's hand trembled around the phone. Daniel reached toward her, not to take the phone, but to steady her hand. "It's okay," he murmured. "You're not alone." Then he raised his voice, not loud, but clear. "Officer Rourke is already on his way back, isn't he, Marla?" Her silence was confirmation enough. "You weren't planning to arrest Elena," Daniel continued. "You were planning to arrest me. Public scandal. Unstable air interferes with active investigation. Enough for the board to sign me out permanently." Marla did not deny it, because denial was for people who needed to hide. Marla never hid. "You were always too sentimental to run the company," she replied. Daniel looked at her, really looked. "All these years," he said quietly, "I thought you hated me because I stepped away, because I didn't want to play your games. But it wasn't that, was it?" He let the truth fall like a blade. "You hated me because I loved someone once, and she didn't survive it." The room stilled. Elena's breath caught, because there was something old in that sentence, something heavy, something scarred. Marla's jaw tightened just slightly. "Feelings," she said, disdain dripping from every syllable, "make men weak. You are not built for leadership, Daniel. I am, and the company needs strength." Daniel shook his head slowly, as though finally understanding something he could never name as a child. "No," he said, The company needs humanity. It's you who needs power. Marla exhaled once, controlled, composed. "Rick," she said, her voice turning sharp, "take the phone." Rick lunged, and this time Daniel didn't restrain himself. He moved fast, knocking Rick's arm aside, driving his shoulder into the man's chest, sending him back into the conference table. Papers flew, coffee spilled. The security guard reached for Daniel, but Elena stepped into his path, not fighting but blocking, long enough for Daniel to position himself between them. Marla stood completely still, watching, measuring. Then she spoke a single sentence that changed the course of the entire day. "Call CPS." The words hit like thunder. Elena's knees nearly buckled, because she knew exactly what that meant. If Child Protective Services arrived to investigate living conditions, Lily could be taken. Not questioned, taken. Not for days, not temporarily, for years. Lily stepped closer to Elena, her fingers digging in. "No," she whispered. "No, please, Elena, don't let them—" Daniel's heart slammed against his ribs. He didn't think. He just acted. He grabbed Elena and Lily by the hands and said, voice hard and without room for refusal, "We're leaving." Rick blocked the doorway. But Daniel smiled, a slow, cold, dangerous smile that carried his entire bloodline in its shadow. "Move." Rick hesitated. Just long enough. Daniel shoved the door open. They ran, down the hallway, past the reception desk, into the bright, blinding North Carolina afternoon. Lily was crying. Elena was shaking. Daniel wasn't breathing. The SUV engine roared behind them. They didn't have a plan. They just had one truth. They could not stop now, because the moment they did, they would lose everything. They didn't stop running until the SUV disappeared behind a line of oak trees, skirting the edge of Bocatcha Mountain. Daniel led them down a steep service trail, one that most locals never noticed, one he had taken on early mornings, pretending he was just another man with grease under his nails. Lily clung to Elena's hand, breath shaky, her small shoes slipping on the dirt. Daniel slowed his pace, letting them move together. "Where are we going?" Elena gasped, finally finding her voice. "Somewhere they won't look first," Daniel said. "Just trust me a little longer." Elena's eyes flicked to him, hurt, fear, confusion, all tangled into one sharp ache. "You say that like you haven't been lying to me since the moment we met." The words landed hard. He deserved them. He exhaled, slow. "You're right, I have." They reached the bottom of the trail, where an old bus stop sat beside an abandoned produce stand. A Route 13 bus rattled up moments later. No cameras, no security, no reason for anyone to suspect 3 ordinary passengers. They boarded, they sat, and for the first time since the conference room, there was stillness. Lily leaned into Elena's side, exhausted, wiping tears with her sleeve. Elena stared out the window, jaw trembling, not with helplessness, but with fury. "Tell me the truth," she said quietly. Daniel looked at his own reflection in the window, grease-streaked hair unruly, work boots worn down at the heel. He didn't look like a Whitford. And yet— "My name is Daniel Whitford," he said. "I was born into the Whitford group. When my parents died, my aunt took control. I walked away from the company 2 years ago because I couldn't keep destroying people to expand it." He paused. "And I came to the garage because I needed to know if people were still real somewhere. If kindness existed outside of money, if anyone cared without expecting something in return." Elena closed her eyes. A tear slipped free, not for him, but for the cruelty of the world that made a man need to disguise himself just to breathe. "And you saw me," she whispered. Daniel nodded. "I saw you." Lily looked at him then, small, trusting. "Are we safe?" she asked. Daniel hesitated only once. "Yes," he said. "I'll make sure of it." They got off near Black Mountain, a quiet town with more churches than grocery stores. Daniel led them to a roadside motel, the kind with flickering neon signs and floral comforters that had seen too many stories. He paid in cash, no names, no questions. Inside the small room, Elena sat on the edge of the bed and finally let her face fall into her hands. Not crying, not yet. just trying to hold her world in place long enough to understand it. Lily went to the window, watching cars pass like slow-moving ghosts. Daniel stood near the door, giving Elena space. "You should have told me," she said, voice tight. "I know. You let me look at you like you were one of us. You let me believe." Her voice cracked and she bit down hard to silence it. "Do you know what it feels like to trust someone when you have nothing? She stopped. The words trembled between them. Daniel moved a step closer, but not enough to touch. "I didn't come to you with power," he said. "I came to you because I didn't want to be the kind of person who looks at you with it." Silence. The small refrigerator hummed. Lily turned from the window. "Elena?" she whispered. Elena took her hand immediately. Her strength reassembled itself, not loudly but quietly, piece by piece. "What happens now?" she asked. Daniel didn't hesitate. "Now we fight back." Elena laughed, dry, startled, almost bitter. "Against your aunt? Against the police? Against the whole world?" "Yes," he said simply, "because she expects fear. She expects silence. She expects us to run and disappear. But we're not going to." Elena looked up at him then, not as the woman who was cornered, but as the woman who had stood in front of 3 grown men in a repair shop without flinching. "And how do we fight?" she asked softly. Daniel pulled the burner phone from his jacket. "I have proof. Financial fraud, illegal payments, ledger records. Enough to put Rick and Rourke behind bars and force Marla off the board." Elena blinked, disbelief flickering into hope. "But if we expose them," Daniel continued, "they'll come for us first. She won't stop until she destroys you to get to me." Lily's fingers tightened around Elena's. "Then what do we do?" Lily whispered. Daniel looked at both of them. "We don't run. We go home." Elena stared at him, breath caught. "Savannah?" she asked. "No," he said. "The Whitford estate, the board, the press, all of them." He looked at Elena, really looked, and said the words that would change everything. "We tell the world together." Lily's eyes widened. Elena's breath trembled, because this wasn't just a defense. It was a war, and for the first time in their lives, they weren't fighting alone. The Whitford estate was not just a house. It was an empire built in brick and marble, its front gates rising higher than the oak trees that lined the long driveway. Reporters often described it as historic, stately, timeless. But to Daniel it had always felt like a fortress, a place where power spoke softly, but cruelty echoed. 3 days after they fled Asheville, they were there, standing at the bottom of the gates in the quiet light of early morning. Fog rolled across the grounds like a veil. The world felt suspended, waiting. Eleanor's hand gripped Lily's. Lily held a small paper bag with her medication in one hand and her worn cardigan sleeve in the other. Daniel stood beside them, shoulders straight, eyes fixed on the house as though facing a past he had once buried there. He had called the press the night before, anonymous tips to 3 local newspapers, 1 investigative journalist he trusted, and a small independent documentary outlet known for exposing corporate abuse. He didn't offer details. He simply gave them a location and a time. The rest would follow. Now all that remained was the confrontation. Elena looked up at the mansion, her throat tight. "What if she tries to separate us the moment we walk in?" "She won't," Daniel said quietly, "not with cameras outside." And sure enough, just down the road, 2 cars sat idling, reporters waiting for the moment to strike like wolves smelling blood. But they weren't the only ones waiting. The front doors opened and Marla stepped out, flanked by 2 board members and a lawyer. Her pearls gleamed in the pale light. Her posture was perfect, controlled, rehearsed. Beside her stood Camden Rourke, not in uniform today, which meant he was here not as an officer, but as muscle. Elena felt her heartbeat climb. Lily pressed closer. Marla descended the steps slowly, like royalty greeting commoners. "So," she said, voice calm as cut glass, "you've brought company." Daniel didn't flinch. "I didn't come to negotiate. I came to reveal the truth." Marla's eyes slid to Elena and Lily, as though they were stains on the marble. "You came to embarrass yourself," she replied, "and to drag these 2 down with you. You brought them into a war they cannot survive." Elena stepped forward before Daniel could speak. No tremble, no fear left to give. "You are the one who dragged us," she said softly. "You cornered us. You tried to take Lily. You tried to break us so we would disappear quietly." Her voice tightened, but she held steady. "We are not the ones who should be ashamed." For the first time, Marla's expression flickered, just a crack. Daniel took out the burner phone. "This contains financial records tying you to fraudulent withdrawals, illegal payments to Rourke, and the staged theft." Rourke moved. Daniel didn't. "Take one more step," he said, voice low, "and I walk down that driveway and hand this to the press myself." Marla's lawyer held out a hand, stopping Rourke. Marla exhaled slowly, regaining composure. "You think you're winning, but all I need to do is destroy the credibility of your witnesses. A former mechanic, a caretaker, a girl with developmental delays. The world will believe me." Lily stepped forward. Her voice was small, but it did not shake. "You talk too much." Everyone turned. Lily looked directly into Marla's eyes, her own still red from days of fear, yet impossibly clear. "You talk, and talk, and talk, but you don't listen." She stepped closer, still holding Elena's hand. "Elena listens, Danny listens. That's why we're not afraid of you." The board members shifted. Something uncomfortable rippled across their faces, because Lily's words, that simple truth, cut cleaner than any threat. Marla's jaw clenched. "You insolent!" Daniel stepped in front of them, gently guiding both Elena and Lily behind him. "It ends today," he said. "You step down from the board. You sign a forced retirement agreement. You hand over operational control to the oversight committee. And you walk away quietly." Marla laughed, not mocking, genuine. "You still don't understand the world, Daniel." Her eyes turned sharp, triumphant. "You don't win by revealing the truth. You win by controlling it." She lifted her hand. The mansion doors opened again, and someone walked out, someone Daniel had not seen in 4 years. A woman with red hair pulled into a low twist, a woman whose absence had destroyed him, a woman he had once loved so deeply it rewrote him from the inside. Claire, alive, standing, looking at him with eyes full of something he had once known intimately. Elena froze. Lily's hand slipped from hers. Daniel's world stopped. Marla's smile was soft now. "Shall we continue?" For a moment, the world did not move. The air around them thickened, like it had been pulled into the gravity of one single impossible fact. Claire was alive. Daniel felt his pulse stop. His lungs forgot how to work. The memory of her, laughing in sunlight, crying in his arms, the final silence in a hospital room, came crashing into him so suddenly he staggered. Elena watched him, her breath catching, not from jealousy but from something quieter, deeper. Recognition. The recognition of a wound reopening. Claire took a step forward. "Daniel," she said softly. His name in her voice was a shard of glass. Familiar, sharp, beautiful, terrifying. He forced himself to speak. "Claire." "How?" She didn't smile, didn't cry. Her voice was steady, but her hands were trembling. "I didn't die, Daniel. I was sent away." The board members shifted. Rourke looked deliberately at the ground. Marla watched like a sculptor admiring her work. Daniel shook his head. "Sent away? I was told you were—" Claire swallowed hard. "Your aunt staged it. The ambulance. The doctors. Everything. She told me if I didn't disappear, she would bankrupt my family. They would lose their home, their savings, their future." Eleanor's breath broke on the air. Lily's eyes filled with tears. Daniel stared at Marla, disbelief turning slowly, painfully, into a kind of clarity too heavy to hold. "You destroyed us," he whispered. Marla did not flinch. "Love makes you weak." "I was protecting the company." Claire stepped closer. "I fought it, Daniel. I tried, but I was 21, scared, and she had all the power. I thought staying away was saving you." Daniel's vision blurred. Not from tears. Those had been taken from him years ago, from rage. He took one step forward before he even realized he had moved, but Claire lifted her hand, not to stop him, but to steady him. "It took me years to find a way back," she said, "but when I heard you left the company, I thought maybe we could find each other again." Elena exhaled softly, a sound of understanding, of heartbreak. Not because Daniel didn't care for her, but because she saw the truth. This was a wound older than them, a wound that shaped him long before their lives collided. Daniel turned to Elena, not choosing, not comparing, just needing her to understand. "Elena," he began, but Elena shook her head gently. "You don't owe me anything," she whispered. "You cared about her before your world fell apart. I know what it is to carry someone in your bones." Her voice didn't break. She had learned to break silently long ago. But Lily stepped between them, small hand reaching for Elena's. "She doesn't want to go back," Lily said quietly. "She's just lost." Claire's eyes glistened. "I don't want to break anything," she said, voice trembling. "I only want to tell the truth, because hiding it has been killing me." Marla's voice cut through the moment like a blade. "Well, now that the emotional theater is finished..." Daniel turned on her. "No, we're not finished." Marla raised a brow. "How you think your heartbreak wins you points? These people," she waved a hand toward Elena and Lily, dismissive, cold, "have no place in our world." Lily stepped forward, and the world changed again. "You don't have a world," she said simply. "You just have walls." It was not defiance, it was truth, raw, innocent, unfiltered, and it hit everyone like something holy cutting through a room full of lies. The board members looked away first. Even Rourke's jaw shifted. Because cruelty is easy, until innocence calls it by its name. Marla's veneer cracked, not visibly, not loudly, but with a subtle tightening at the corner of her mouth. Daniel stepped beside Elena and Lily, not accidentally, not symbolically, but choosing them in the open light of morning. "Claire," he said softly, turning to her, "you're safe now. No one will hurt you again. But this, what happens today, is not about us. It's about them." Claire nodded, eyes shining, not with loss, but with understanding. Elena's chin lifted, not possessive, not afraid, just steady. Daniel turned back to Marla. "I'm not here to reclaim the company," he said. "I'm here to remove you from it." Marla's eyes narrowed. "You have no authority." Daniel held up the burner phone. "This," he said, "is enough for a federal inquiry." The press cars began rolling down the driveway, the sound of cameras, the hum of microphones warming up, the first flash of a news van. Marla finally, truly, reacted. Her face twisted, not with rage, with fear, because power only works in the dark, and the sun was rising. The first tripod clicked open on the gravel like a trigger, then another, then a half-dozen more. Microphones bloomed at the end of long poles. Camera lights flared against the pale morning. The Whitford facade, designed to intimidate, became an accidental stage. Marla moved first. Of course she did. She stepped to the top stair as if to greet donors at a gala, chin lifted, pearls immaculate. "Ladies and gentlemen," she began, voice silk over steel, "we've suffered an unfortunate spate of rumors. Our family remains committed to philanthropic..." "Ms. Whitford," a reporter cut in, "did you authorize payments to Officer Camden Rourke from a discretionary fund tied to vendor accounts?" A ripple went through the crowd. Marla didn't blink. "Absolutely not." Daniel descended 2 steps and lifted the burner. "You did," he said. "Ledger photos. Transfers routed to shell entities connected to Rourke, and staged misconduct to smear a housekeeper who refused to be bullied." Cameras swung to Elena. She did not hide. She placed a steady hand on Lily's shoulder, the two of them framed by a mansion that had never been built for people like them. A second reporter shouted, "If you have proof, why not hand it to authorities right now?" "We will," Daniel answered, "but not to men you've already paid." Rourke shifted his weight, jaw set. "Careful, son." "Don't call him son," Lily said so softly the nearest microphones barely caught it. "You don't talk to people like you own them." Laughter broke out, startled, disbelieving, then strangely relieved. The spell of wealth was cracking in public. Marla tried to seize it back. "This young woman and her dependent have been coached," she said, gesturing toward Elena and Lily as if they were disturbances to be removed. "They are not credible witnesses." A hush fell, heavy and mean. Then Claire stepped down one stair. She held up a small drive on a leather cord, the kind you wear when you're afraid someone will rip it from your bag. "I am," she said. "Credible." Silence sharpened. Every lens tightened. "I have audio," Claire continued, voice steady now. "From the night I died. The ambulance captain was paid. I was moved to a private facility and told my family would be destroyed if I contacted Daniel. I kept a recording because I was a coward, and it was all I had." She looked at Daniel, 1,000 apologies in a single glance. "I can't undo those years, but I can stop the lie." She handed the drive to the nearest independent journalist, the one Daniel had called at midnight, the one who still wore a thrifted blazer and a wedding band carved thin with wear. He didn't posture. He plugged the drive into a field laptop, turned the volume up, and hit play. A voice emerged. Marla's. Clinical. Unmistakable. "You will transfer her in 15. The documents are signed. He believes she died at 0247. I want your staff's phones collected. No photos, no leaks. If she surfaces, her parents lose their mortgage and any business credit in their name." The lawn seemed to inhale and hold. The board members looked sick. One muttered, "God," under his breath. Rourke moved, fast this time, toward the journalist. He didn't make it. Elena stepped sideways, not with force but with nerve honed by every small war she'd ever had to fight. "No," she said simply, putting herself between Rourke and the laptop. Rourke hesitated, not at her word, but at the lenses aimed over her shoulder. "There are some things you can do in the dark that you cannot do under daylight's mathematics." A low siren whooped once at the end of the drive. 2 cruisers rolled up, not Asheville PD, State Bureau of Investigation. Behind them, a sedan flashed an Attorney General placard. Marla recovered like a woman who had rehearsed for collapse. "How convenient," she said to Daniel, voice measured. "You think state men are different? I know their bosses." The AG investigator stepped forward, badge out. "Ma'am, a complaint and affidavit arrived last night with exhibits compelling enough for emergency review. We're here with a limited warrant to secure financial records and electronic systems at this property." Marla smiled. "Our counsel can observe," the agent said, moving past her. "They won't obstruct." Rourke took a half step toward the hedges, calculating distance, speed, consequence. He chose wrong. 2 agents moved in crisp tandem, hands gentle, firm, practiced. "Officer Rourke," one said evenly, "you'll come with us." He didn't fight. Men used to private leverage rarely know what to do with public law. A voice rose from the back, older, tremulous, carrying the weight of a lifetime of quiet. "I have something." All eyes turned. The Whitford estate housekeeper, May Carter, 40 years in uniformed service, stepped forward clutching a brown envelope. Her hands shook, but her eyes were clear. "I was told to swap the security tapes the night that poor girl went missing," she said, nodding toward Claire. "I did it, and then I took the originals to my pastor the next morning because I needed the Lord to see them before anybody else did." She lifted the envelope a little higher. "He kept them in a church safe. We prayed I'd never have to use them, but prayer isn't for hiding, it's for courage." Elena reached for May's free hand and squeezed without thinking. 2 women on opposite sides of the marble, the same spine in both. The investigator took the envelope like it was a relic. He handed it to a tech, who labeled it, bagged it, and moved. A board member cleared his throat. "Ms. Whitford," he said to Marla, voice formal now, "given these developments, I'm calling an emergency vote to suspend you pending investigation." Marla laughed, high, brittle. "You can't run Whitford without me. That boy refuses to carry it." Daniel stepped forward, year-worn grief balanced against brand-new resolve. "I'm not carrying it," he said. "We are." The pronoun landed like thunder. He turned to the cameras. "My father wrote a sunset clause into the bylaws after the mill strike in '97. It allowed leadership to convert shares to an employee trust If the board engaged in malice that endangers the dignity of non-executive workers, he taught me the line because he was ashamed we needed it. He looked at Elena, at May, at the mechanics who had come in their lunch breaks and stood on the sidewalk with folded arms. We'll trigger it today. A murmur rose. Shock, alarm, hope. A lawyer muttered. That clause was never and stopped when the investigator lifted a copy folder stamped by the Secretary of State. Marla's face drained of color. For the first time since morning, she looked like a woman, not an edifice. "You'd burn an empire to the ground just to spite me?" she whispered. Daniel shook his head. "No," he said. "I'm setting it on new foundations." Cameras clicked like rain. Elena didn't speak. She didn't need to. The world could see what it meant when power bent toward those it had once crushed. Then Lily, who had been holding it together with both hands, took a small step to the microphones. A reporter tried to block her gently. She moved around him with a seriousness beyond her years. "My sister works hard," she said, her voice plain, unadorned. "She cleans the dirt you don't see so you can pretend you're clean. She never asked you for anything. But you tried to take everything. That's not strong. That's empty." The line cut through every softened mind in earshot. A few cameras lowered, not because the shot was done, because hands that had been taught to be neutral remembered they were human. The investigator turned to Marla. "Ma'am, you'll come with us for questioning." Marla met Daniel's eyes, motherless aunt and motherless nephew, two people who had mistaken hardness for safety and paid for it with their souls. For a heartbeat, something like grief flickered across her face. Then it was gone. She lifted her chin and walked between the agents. Rourke followed. Rick Hawes, plucked from a side gate by uniformed deputies, stumbled along complaining about due process. The lawn sagged, as if the ground itself exhaled. Claire put a hand on Daniel's sleeve, not to pull him back to her, not to stake a claim, just to steady him. He turned to Elena. The triangle of truth between them did not demand resolution in public. It demanded honesty. He spoke into the microphones one last time, not as a savior, not as a Whitford, as a man. "We're going to audit everything," he said. "We'll make the records public. We'll pay back what was stolen, with interest. And before this day ends, there will be a safe place for workers who've been hurt by us to be heard, compensated and protected." He glanced at Elena. "It starts with the two who taught me what real strength looks like." The press surged with questions. The investigator signaled his team. May Carter leaned on Elena's arm and whispered, "Took 40 years, but I think we finally cleaned the right room." Elena smiled, small, stunned, a little broken. Lily tucked herself under her sister's arm and looked up at Daniel. "Is it over?" she asked. He shook his head. "No," he said, a gentleness in him that hadn't existed a month ago. "But we're past the worst part." From behind the cameras, a church bell rang noon. It carried across the lawns, over the hedges, into the marble spaces that had swallowed too many quiet cries. Inside the house, a door opened to a boardroom that would never look the same again. Outside, on the steps, 3 lives waited for what comes after truth. In the days that followed, the Whitford estate no longer felt like a fortress. People walked through its halls not with fear, but with purpose. The silence that once swallowed pain now carried voices, voices that had been hidden, ignored, pushed beneath polished floors. The investigation unfolded quickly once truth was no longer caged. Financial auditors confirmed what Daniel had uncovered: the fraudulent withdrawals, the payments to Rourke, the manufacturing of false accusations, the staged disappearance of Claire. The board did not fight the suspension. They couldn't. The evidence was overwhelming, the public watching too closely now. Marla was indicted within a week. Rick was arrested and charged. Rourke, too. The shop in Asheville made the local paper, not as a scandal, but as the place where courage revealed itself. And May Carter, the housekeeper who had safeguarded a truth for 40 years, became a symbol of quiet resistance, a living reminder that sometimes the most powerful rebellion is simply refusing to forget. Daniel did not take the company back alone. He meant what he said. The employee trust was established with legal clarity and financial permanence. A percentage of every quarterly profit redirected into health plans, crisis funds, and education support for the families of workers. A new board formed, half executives, half workers. No one in the press had expected it, but the public understood it. Power shared is power made human. Elena and Lily were offered a home on the estate, not out of charity, but out of choice. A space of safety, peace, and dignity. A place where Lily could draw flowers near bright windows and laugh without watching for danger. But Elena paused before accepting. She stood beneath the magnolia tree near the back porch, the one where Daniel's mother once sat and read to him as a child. The air smelled of sweetgrass and morning rain. "I don't want to be someone you saved," she said. "I want to be someone who stands beside you." Daniel took her hands, not to pull her close, but to meet her. "You were never someone I saved," he said. "You are someone who saved me." Her eyes softened. Not a romance born of rescue, a connection born of survival, honesty, and choosing each other freely. Lily, sitting in the grass, looked up and grinned. "We can stay, right?" Elena laughed softly. "Yes, Lily, we can stay." And Claire? Her chapter did not end in bitterness or return. She found her family again, helped them rebuild. Began studying to become a social advocate for women forced into silence the way she once was. When she and Daniel hugged goodbye on the estate steps, it was not tragic, it was peaceful. Two people who had loved deeply, hurt deeply, and grown into different futures. "Don't disappear this time," Daniel said. She smiled. Not disappearing, just beginning. They released each other gently, the past finally set free. Months later, on a quiet spring afternoon, Elena and Daniel walked through the gardens while Lily chased butterflies along the stepping stones. The world did not feel perfect, but it felt possible. Daniel paused, looking at the house where he once felt nothing but weight. "Do you ever think we were meant to cross paths?" he asked. Elena considered it. "Maybe," she said. "Or maybe we just refused to stay silent when the world told us to break." Daniel nodded. Strength did not always roar. Sometimes it simply endured. A gust of warm breeze moved through the magnolia leaves. Lily ran to them laughing, sunlight in her hair, and for the first time in a long, long time, Daniel felt home. If this story touched your heart, let it live beyond this moment. Tell us in the comments where you are listening from, your city, your country, your corner of the world. Your presence here helps this community grow. And if you haven't yet, subscribe and stay with us. There are more stories to share, more hearts to honor, more light to find in the dark. We'll be waiting for you in the next chapter.